This is Late Night Health, the radio show that cares about the most important part of your life, your health. During the next 10 or 12 minutes or so, we're going to spend some time with Dr. Robert Nagourney. We're going to be talking specifically about the upcoming Susan G. Komen, Los Angeles County 7th Annual Metastatic Breast Cancer Conference, Creating Understanding, One Community After Another. We're going to be spending some time with Dr. Robert Nagourney from the Nagourney Cancer Institute. He will be giving the keynote address at this event that has just a wide variety of speakers and activities. And of course, one of the biggest things is it's going to be streamed live for free in the following languages: English, Spanish, Chinese, Vietnamese, Korean, and Cambodian. It's going to be held on January 4th at the City of Hope in Duarte, California from 8:30 a.m. until 5 o'clock. We talked to Dr. Nagourney a few years ago regarding his book, and I've got the name of the book buried here, Doctor. What was the name of your book? I apologize.
Outliving Cancer.
And will there be an update soon?
Yes, actually, I think there will.
That's good. Are we living more? People who have cancer, they have a better prognosis today than they did, say, even 10 years ago?
Yeah, first of all, Mark, thank you for having me, and I'm honored to be asked to speak at this upcoming Komen event. Yes, to answer your question, I think there has been progress. Cancer incidence, unfortunately, continues to increase, and according to the World Health Organization's looking toward 2050, there will be continued incidence of cancer. However, we are making progress, and particularly in select diseases like breast cancer, where the incidence continues to rise slowly, but the survivals improve quite dramatically.
What's causing it? I mean, we've talked to a lot of people from alternative health to traditional medical, and they both seem to agree that it's, our diet, lack of exercise, even our minds, what we're thinking. I could go on and on. Would you concur with that?
Well, I think that cancer may be an end result of lifelong stressors that we encounter. We call them risk factors, but according to a paper we published in August of 2018, we think that many patients have predispositions to cancer. And to your point, we are all metabolic entities. We are all making and using energy, and our bodies are machines that are very, very nicely tuned. During the course of our lives, depending on what we do, we put stresses onto the machine. For example, in breast cancer, we now know women who become pregnant before 30 put a diminution in the stress on their breast tissues. Women who breastfeed lower the stressors on their breast tissues. If you are obese, if you are exposed to a higher environmental hormone burden, you may put additional stressors on your tissues, so that cancer is a kind of cumulative event. And yes, all of these dietary, lifestyle, life choices do influence the outcome and development and outcome of cancer.
And of course, the Susan G. Komen Foundation focuses on breast cancer. Is breast cancer, well, I know the answer as I'm thinking of the question, and that is that there's more and more women under the age of, say, 40 who are being diagnosed with breast cancer.
Well, breast cancer itself, in incidence, is slowly rising, about 0.4% per year rise, but the survival has improved. Death rates from cancer peaked in about 1989 and have fallen quite nicely, and I think that's partly a reflection of the application of mammography, earlier detection, partly a reflection of the recognition that certain hormonal exposures, particularly the mixed estrogen-progesterone formulations, had been increasing risk, and I think we've smartened up a bit. Now, cancer in the younger population, unfortunately, not just breast, but gastrointestinal cancers, particularly rectal cancers, are rising rapidly. Cancers of the gastroesophageal junction in young men, rising rapidly. And these are probably lifestyle and environmental factors playing into our pre-existing frailties and predispositions. Now, from a standpoint of breast cancer, one of the reasons that the younger population had characteristically had a bad time with all this is because the younger population are at greater risk for triple negative. As you may be aware, there are different kinds of breast cancer. It's not just one disease.
Right.
And we now realize there are at least 5 separate subtypes. The types known as basaloid or the Claudin-Lows are really bad actors. And those ones that occur much more commonly in black populations, up to, say, 20+% in the black population. In the younger population, the estrogen-negative tumors do confront us with a more challenging disease. And that may be in part why we're so troubled by these young cancer instances and the poor survivals.
And I interviewed somebody within the last few years as a media sponsor of Komen, and she was like 28 or 29. I interviewed somebody else. She was in her early 30s and had a double mastectomy because she had the gene. And
right.
Can we talk about that for a second? Is that something that you would recommend to a patient?
Well, the issue is that we have been very focused on the genetic basis of cancer. And there's been stunning breakthroughs using expression profiles and gene profiles to identify separate groups of cancers. As I mentioned, the work by Peru and others identified 5 molecular patterns of cancer. And we're also very interested in women who develop cancer as a result of what are known as the DNA fidelity genes. What we mean by that is, are you keeping your genes clean? Some people have mutations in BRCA1 or BRCA2 or ATM or CHEK2 or others, and they develop accumulations of genetic abnormalities. They can't seem to keep their house clean, and they ultimately accumulate these cancers. Broken genes lead to these cancers. Now that can occur in a young population, and you know the Angelina Jolie story, where she at a young age suddenly realized she carried this gene. She underwent the surgeries to prevent the risk. That's a subpopulation, and they constitute the familial, or what we call germline, cancer predispositions. They are certainly at-risk group, but interestingly, the people that carry that, the people at risk for cancer, also have an Achilles heel. It turns out that the BRCA1 and BRCA2 genes, because the cells can't repair DNA, are particularly sensitive to some forms of chemotherapy. And we wrote a paper, I hate to say how long ago, it'll be 20 years ago.
Oh my.
We were one of the first to discover in the Journal of Clinical Oncology that these patients can actually do very well. In fact, I'm pleased to say that many of my triple negatives and most of my BRCA patients do very well because they are exquisitely sensitive to certain forms of chemotherapies like the platinums.
Interesting. The upcoming metastatic breast cancer conference, we should talk about metastatic breast cancer. I have a friend who was diagnosed 3 years ago with breast cancer and successfully was treated. And last week was told she had 10 small brain tumors. 3 years later, which is devastating to her and to her family and friends. Is it common for it to spread? That's what metastatic means.
Yes, metastatic or stage 4 breast cancer means that it is spread. First of all, cancers are nefarious and can go anywhere. So brain or bone or liver or lung, it's almost impossible to predict where. Brain is certainly a site that it can show up in. Of the 268,000 more or less breast cancers that will be diagnosed this year, luckily, only about 6 to 10% are metastatic at presentation. So we're fortunate to say that it at least is not common to have it widely spread when you first find it. However, 20 to 30+% of patients who have early stage disease ultimately recur. So metastatic breast cancer is a major public health issue. And yes, it is a hurdle that we're still trying to get over in terms of saving these lives and durably getting these patients in remission.
Let's talk about Robert, okay? Why you became a doc, and you went to McGill in Montreal. My father-in-law's from Montreal, and I've been there a couple times. It's a great city, great food city. But you're also a researcher as well as seeing patients. You've got a surgery, I think, scheduled in 20 minutes from now.
Right.
I hope it's an easy one. And the patient is. I hope it's not a serious one. Why did you become a doc, and how did you get involved in both seeing patients and research? Because that's kind of an unusual combination.
Maybe a little. First of all, I'm a fourth generation. My son is now in medical school, so there's 4 generations of us in medicine, from my grandfather and through all the way to me and my son. And medicine for me was a calling. There was never a question in my life that I'd be a doctor. I loved it from the moment I knew what I was talking about. In terms of going into cancer, I had originally not expected to do that, but I found myself in a research laboratory doing basic research. I published some papers, and everything went from there. My own work is what's called translational research. And translational research, as it sounds, takes a basic science idea and turns it into a practical and useful idea. And I think we need much, much more of that. Unfortunately, today, many medical doctors become very good at clinical diagnosis and clinical therapy, and many scientists become very smart about the scientific basis of cancer, but there's a growing gap between them. And so the PhDs, the scientists, who are doing all this great discovery work, turn around to the doctors and say, gee, I have this great idea, and I'd like you to try it. And I think the problem there is what the doctor should be doing is saying, gee, I have this problem, can you solve it? You see, I think we've kind of got the whole thing backwards. So what I like to do in my clinical work is to say, well, why is it that this patient does badly or this patient does well? And then I go back to the laboratory where we do something called tissue culture. And in tissue culture, we isolate cancer cells from patients. We put them into an environment where we can test them. And then we add the drugs and combinations and sequences to see, well, does this class of drug or this class of drug influence it? And we just submitted a paper about a week ago on the brand newest class of drugs, which target the insulin signaling and what's called the phosphonol kinase signaling. And my son, actually, I'm proud to say, joined me on that paper.
Oh,
so
terrific.
we're working to come up with brand new ways to do this. We've been studying this one compound for 5 years, and it just in May got an approval. So we think that we can jumpstart new drug development, new thinking, by using patient cancer to study the disease.
Terrific. Congratulations on your son. That's terrific. Where's he going to school?
Well, he's an undergraduate at Chapman University. My other son is up in Sacramento in medical school. So I've got 2 boys, both interested in medicine.
Wow. Even with all the problems of medicine today? With insurance? I mean, come on.
I must say I have some misgivings, but if you want to be a doctor, there's really nothing else you can do.
Yeah, I guess so. I wanted to be a doctor until I hit trigonometry in high school. Or
biochemistry.
The chemistry part was great. I could do that. I couldn't balance the equations, though. There must be something about the math part. Anyway, Dr. Robert Nagourney is the founder and medical director of the Nagourney Cancer Institute in Long Beach, California. Do you have a website?
Yes. We're Nagourney Cancer Institute. Easy to find on Google or any of the search engines, and we welcome people to come and read about what we're doing. I write regular blogs. There's a lot of great patient testimonials and some wonderful survival stories, even for the most advanced patients. You mentioned the one patient I'm going over to see in a few minutes. This is actually a woman from Canada who's come down yesterday to see us. She has ovarian cancer, but we will be doing a procedure to isolate some cells. She's had a very tough time of it, and I'm hoping this young woman will be a success story. I'm reminded of one of my patients who came to me with untreatable ovarian cancer and is now in complete remission 20 years later.
Oh my!
After failing everything. Yeah, so we're celebrating her 20th anniversary of disease-free survival, contrary to all expectations. We love more stories like that.
Thank you. And if you want to register for the conference, you can call area code 805-908-2054 or email mbc@KomenLACounty.org. I'll repeat that email. That's mbc@KomenLACounty.org. I'm Mark Alyn here on Late Night Health. We'll see you next time.